Hi, I'm Mark, and welcome to the current Outside Views report on Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. At the second Russian Africa summit in St. Petersburg, Kremlin chief Vladimir Putin assured the representatives of the continent of reliable food supply. Russia remains a reliable supplier of food for Africa, is what Putin said on Thursday. At the same time, he categorically dismissed accusations from the West as hypocritical that Russia was now playing Hunger Games with its war against Ukraine and the blockade of the country's grain deliveries via the Black Sea. At the meeting, which lasted until Friday, Putin announced that he would have between 25,000 and 50,000 tons delivered free of charge to countries in need over the next 3 to 4 months. The grain is to end up in Zimbabwe, Mali, Burkina Faso, Somalia, Eritrea, and the Central African Republic. And Putin also said that more than 200,000 tons of fertilizer from Russia were stranded in European ports, which Moscow could also hand over in a humanitarian effort. A paradoxical picture emerges. On the one hand, the West is creating obstacles to the deliveries of our grain and fertilizer. On the other hand, let me be clear, we are being hypocritically blamed for the crisis situation on the world market. That's what Putin said in a speech to his guests. Russia supplies about 20% of the wheat for the world market today. Putin had previously met with representatives of the African Union to discuss grain deliveries. The chairman of the AU Commission, Moussa Faki Mohammed, complained that the war between Russia and Ukraine was partly exacerbating the food crisis. Africa is suffering, he said, according to the Russian translation. African Union leader and Comoros President Azali Assoumani called on Russia and Ukraine to end their war. Africa needs the Russian and Ukrainian grain, is what he told a plenary session. The lives of many people depend on the deliveries. Today it's important to struggle for sustainable peace between Russia and Ukraine, he said. A spokeswoman for US President Joe Biden expressed skepticism in Washington about the food deliveries promised by Russia. It is up to Russia to show that this is not an empty promise, said Karine Jean-Pierre on Thursday. And she also referred to statements by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who had previously said that a handful of donations to some countries could not reverse the dramatic effects of the blockade on grain shipments across the Black Sea. Last week, Putin cancelled the agreement brokered by the United Nations and Turkey to ship Ukrainian grain across the Black Sea. This caused new uncertainty on the global food markets because Ukraine is considered an important exporter of corn and wheat, among other things, and accuses Russia of stealing its grain, for example, in the occupied territories. Putin rejects a resumption of the agreement. Rather, he is demanding a relaxation of Western sanctions because he sees this as hampering the export of domestic grain and fertilizer. At the same time, he assured that Russia would find ways for supplies to Africa. In the first half of the year, Russia had already exported 10 million tons of grain to Africa. Putin also said that despite the sanctions, Russia-African trade grew by 35% in the first half of the year. Russia is also considered to be Africa's most important arms supplier. Putin advocated a massive expansion of relations between Russia and Africa and also supported the inclusion of the African Union in the group of 20 large and emerging industrial nations. At the G20 summit in India in September, the admission should be decided, said Putin. AU Chairman Assoumani praised a brotherly reception in Russia, like at the first summit 4 years ago in Sochi on the Black Sea. Russia would have always stood by Africa's side, supported the country's struggle for independence despite difficulties, and is an important partner, is what Assoumani said. At meetings with the heads of state and government of several African countries, Putin wanted to show that despite his war of aggression, he is not isolated internationally. And there was a keynote speech from him on Friday. And according to the Kremlin, 49 of the 54 countries on the continent are represented. But head of state and government only came from 17. and that is fewer participants than at the summit premiere in 2019. So that could be something that says something as well. And if you want to know more about the developments in the war of aggression against Ukraine, the next video is in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.